Hey guys. All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get on into our first portrait painting project. To do this, we all are going to be painting the exact same portrait of Booker T. Washington. Now I've already simplified the process down for you a hair. What I have for you is 3 different versions of the exact same photo. So we've got kind of our regular grayscale version, we've got a little bit higher contrast version, and then this extreme black and white contrast version. Taking these 3 photos, we're going to simplify and break down our portrait so that we're able to walk through it step by step. Now to do this portrait, what's going to end up happening is you're going to need just plain old black and white paint. I've got some bigger jugs here that we'll use, but you could also just as easily use anything you have, Walmart or anything you have lying around the house. So we're going to go ahead and use some black and white. You're also going to want a series of different sized paintbrushes. If I'm using a larger canvas, I usually want a longer handled paintbrush, what you've already been using throughout the semester. You're going to need a palette knife of some sort so that we can mix up our grayscale paint. You're going to want a pencil because we're actually going to be freehanding this. Because this is our very first picture, and because I'm giving you the photo to draw from, I'm going to go ahead and give you a simplified version on how you can get this onto your canvas without having to go through the whole process of tracing it on there and kind of cheating. So we're going to draw it on. Then also something that you might need, a palette of some sort. I like to paint at home here on a glass palette. It makes it much easier to clean. I also normally use water-based oil paints. And so I like a more non-porous surface. You can use anything at home too. And then finally, whenever it comes to drawing, sometimes it helps to have a ruler as well. We're going to be using a technique called the Barg method. This Barg method basically allows us to draw our picture onto our canvas using perfectly straight lines. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of math that way and see what we can come up with. So let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, so here's what we're going to do. First things first, I need to get this Booker T. Washington picture onto my canvas. Now I know some of you have some background in drawing and this won't be too challenging for you, and some of you don't. If you've never drawn anything before in your life, don't sweat it. I promise you're going to be absolutely fine. I'm going to teach you a couple methods that are going to make your life a whole lot easier. Now I'm going to use this ruler to help me make sure I get nice, clean, perfect straight lines, or you can not use it at all if you feel comfortable just kind of freehanding. The big name of the game with this particular methodology is that you're not trying to actually draw the face. All we're trying to do is take this simplified, high contrast black and white picture and get a rough estimate of about where this portrait's actually located. So we can do a couple things here real quick. First things first, I'm just going to put a very light dividing line so that I break my canvas into fourths. This way it helps me kind of navigate around the canvas. If you've ever drawn using like the grid method for like a mural, then you'll be familiar with this already. Now I can look in my photo here on my iPad and I can tell that if I break this down right down the middle here, his face is pretty symmetrical on both sides. So it looks to me like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 1/4 of the way is about the edge of his face. So we're just going to go ahead and do 1/4, kind of draw a nice straight line. My canvas is pretty loud. We'll go ahead then, let's see what else. Really, there's only a small gap here at the very tip top. So we're going to say somewhere around there. What we're trying to do is basically draw kind of a box, a bounding box of where about his face is. Looks like about 3/4 of the way, somewhere in there. And then if I look, his chin, if that's about halfway, his chin is maybe just above 1/4. Oh man, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe like 1/5 of the way up. So I'm going to try to expand that grid in my imagination here. So if I go ahead and say this is about halfway, I know this is about 1/4 of the way, I know his chin is just above that. So somewhere here-ish is about where his chin is. So I basically have this dark square. Now, once you get more and more involved into painting, I would suggest not using an actual pencil, but instead using chalk. Chalk will actually absorb the paint and not leave behind kind of a muddy background. But it's our first portrait. We're going to use some pencil here. So I've got this chin location on here, and I can tell his shoulder's kind of coming down to maybe an angle. Let's say a 45-degree angle. I'm bad at math. So we'll say a 45-degree angle coming about where his chin is. Well, I know his chin's about there. So what I can do is go ahead and take this exact same angle, 45, and just move it straight over right to about there. Okay, somewhere in there. I'm starting to kind of see it a little bit. I can kind of round this forehead a little bit, kind of slice off an edge. I know his ear comes very close to his eyes, right? We all have our ears very close to our eyes. That's how glasses work, of course. Well, let's see. A couple things I remember from anatomy class is that your eyes are always in the middle of your overall head, right? Well, if I know that his chin is here and the top of his head's here, I can just kind of rough estimate his eyes are going to be in the middle of his skull, and sure enough, they're about there, maybe a little bit higher, just a hair higher. So I know his ears, or his eyes, excuse me, are going to be right about in that distance. That means his ears are going to be a hair lower, so probably adjacent there. I'm kind of using this angle. They're going to come out a little bit, and then they kind of come straight down. Some people's ears are a little more boxy. In this case, he has more kind of elf-like ears. They're going to be more triangular. As far as where they connect, it's almost to about where the nose is. And the nose looks pretty much smack in the middle of our canvas. So we know that the nose is going to come kind of about there, and the ears are about there. And you can tell this is really angular looking. This is not his particular face. Really all I'm trying to get is a rough estimate of where everything is going to be located. So I can see that his right ear and left ear are pretty much aligned. Looks like the ear on this side here, on our right, is a little bit higher up. So I can just take my ruler, make it a little higher up. Again, rough estimate. And then it kind of comes down a little bit, using straight angles. Kind of comes down almost to his mouth. So his mouth is going to be kind of there. About there. Looks pretty good. Let's see, what else can I adjust? So we know his chin is about, right about there. This jawline, I can't quite see it, but I'm assuming it comes up in this region. And he's got that high kind of collar going on. And I know he's got a side over here somewhere, his shoulder, but honestly I can't see it. It's in pure black. So leave it the way it is in this high contrast photo. Don't try to add anything that you don't literally see yourself. I can see a little bit of his neck right here, kind of coming up. And there's some of his chin. Let's see, get that angle. So chin coming up and over. So I'm just kind of rounding things out, fleshing them out just a little bit. Cut off that corner of his head, give him more of a rounded skull. So you can see how I'm using these hard angles to try and place things. Now I'm going to step back for a second and see it a little bit further. I think it looks pretty good. This chin feels a little high to me, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Remember that even if your particular picture is not perfect, everything that we're about to paint is going to get painted right over top again, so it's not that big of a deal one way or another. Let's take a closer look at some of the detail. Alright, so I want to get a little bit of detail going on for his eyes and his nose and his lips to make it look more like a face. But again, with this black and white high contrast picture, really other than the one eye, a lot of this is kind of blurred out. I don't see the details that I think I see. Remember that we always want to be painting or drawing exactly what we see, not what we think we see. So I'm going to go ahead and work on the eyes first. Those are the fun things to do. And I know I've already drawn kind of a line because I know about where the ears are. All these things can still adjust. Looks like the eyes just align to the corners of the ears right there. So I can imagine that there's going to be an eye kind of in this region. I can also, let's see, use a little bit of measurements. I can fit one eye in between both. So I know that whatever size I make this eye, I should be able to go 1, 2. So roughly about there, kind of doing little trapezoid shapes right now. That looks kind of like a face. I know that the nose comes down, the bridge of the nose, but his nose is coming down at an angle, so I'm going to go ahead and just steal that actual angle right there. And then I've got his nostrils, those come pretty much straight across, right in there, almost like a cartoon character's nose. Kind of straight across like that. Okay. You know, I think I need to move that jaw down just a hair. Let's put his lips in real quick. That's going to come about halfway between the bottom of his nose and the bottom of his jaw. He's just got a bigger chin here. Let's go ahead and throw that in. So the lips kind of come up like a letter M. Do you see that? Up, down, okay, like a letter M. So it's going to come up, down, up, down. And again, do not worry about any level of detail whatsoever. It's just not that important. We'll be adding details as we go along. Put that little node right there, that little wrinkle. Like he's got a little bit of a dimple. This comes in, look how the shadow underneath his chin kind of comes in, down, and around his actual chin. So that's important. Let's go ahead and make sure to do that. Kind of comes in, down, and around. And again, I'm using straight angles for this, right? I'm using straight angles. I think that chin needs to drop just a hair. Yeah, that looks better. Put a little fold right there, that nasolabial fold right there, kind of showed like the nostril. And then as far as the details for the eyes, I'm not going to put a lot of detail here. I know that there's some good lines there and it'd be very tempting to do some outline work, but the honest truth is we want to stay away from outlines as much as we possibly can. They are not going to help us. So let's stay as far away from outlines as we can. We can put a little shadow over here in his ear. And again, just use perfectly straight lines. I know it's going to be tempting to want to trace, but try to fight that urge. Okay, we're starting from absolute scratch because I want to prove to you guys how much you can do with the knowledge you already have. We really have only done still life so far, but that's all you need. If you understand how value, how shading, how all these things work, then you're sitting pretty. You really are. You're going to be able to do a lot more than you give yourself credit for. Obviously, I'm going to be able to help you. I want you guys to send, your paintings along over to me and let me help you along the way. I'm always happy to give you a quick critique, but I don't think that you guys are going to need it. I really don't. I think you guys are going to do just fine. So remember, the big key whenever you're drawing, try your best to stick to straight lines. And if you don't want to use the ruler, don't use the ruler. You can go ahead and just kind of freehand it too. But stick to those straight lines. That's going to be the thing that really helps you more than you expect. I'm going to go ahead and draw on his eyeball, his pupil here. And remember that whenever you're drawing a pupil, just like in anatomy class, if you've had like a drawing class, you don't want to draw the entire circle of the eyeball, right? It looks like you're kind of like cracked out a little bit. We don't want that. So instead, relax the eye. Have some of that iris covered by the top of the eyelid, right? Your pupil is going to just touch the top of that eyelid. Something like that. We can color it in and paint it in here in a second. Looks pretty good. Get his haircut on here. Looks nice. Kind of like a little crew cut thing going on there. Now, you know what? Maybe this isn't looking perfect to you. That's okay. Push through it a little bit. I think sometimes we quit a little bit too early because we want it to be perfect right out of the gate. We want to trace it. We want it to be this perfect painting. But you know what? We're not there yet. We're still learning. We don't want it to be totally perfect, right? You want to stick with the skill set that you've learned along the way. I can see he's got a little bit of highlights over here on his face and a little bit of detail in the eye, so I'm going to try and duplicate that using kind of circles and squares, anything I can to work this eyeball in. A little bit of a highlight in here. And like I said, as you're starting to paint this, maybe you messed up. Maybe you forgot a little highlight piece, or maybe you paint over something. Who cares? Let it dry, paint right over top of it again. I would rather you give it 100% effort and have a near miss than trace it and not actually learn something along the way. Fight that urge to trace it. Fight that urge to make it perfect. It is not supposed to be perfect. You are still learning. If it was perfect, you wouldn't need this class. All right, he's got a little bit of a butt chin, so let's put that little dimple, that little wrinkle in there. He's got this highbrow collar on. That looks pretty dang good, I think. Definitely looks like a portrait. Maybe not Booker T quite yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So we're gonna go ahead and switch over into paint mode. Remember that for this, all we're gonna need is pure white and pure black. We're gonna get that onto the canvas and then we're gonna go from there, okay? All right.